It was just another normal night in Willow Creek, a sleepy little town where everybody knew everybody and nothing exciting ever happened. The kind of town where the biggest news was when the bakery ran out of cinnamon rolls. But that night, everything changed. Emma Carter, a 28-year-old high school teacher, finished late at work. She had stayed after school to help some students with their final projects. At around 9 p.m., she packed up her things, locked her classroom door, and headed for home. The drive should have taken 10 minutes, but Emma never made it. The next morning, her best friend Rachel noticed something strange. Emma wasn't answering her texts. She didn't show up to school. She didn't even call in sick, something Emma would never forget to do. Rachel waited a few more hours, thinking maybe Emma was just having a rough morning. But by noon, she knew something was wrong. Rachel drove to Emma's apartment. She knocked on the door. No answer. She called. No answer. She even looked through the window. The lights were off, and everything looked untouched. Rachel's chest tightened. Something felt off. She decided to call the police. When the officers arrived, they were polite but not too worried. Maybe she went on a spontaneous trip, one said. Maybe she needed a break, said another. But Rachel knew Emma better than that. Emma wasn't the type to just disappear without telling anyone. Still, the police agreed to start a basic search, just in case. That's when they found Emma's car. Her silver Honda was parked at an old gas station just outside town. The place had been closed for years. Now it is just an empty lot, covered in weeds and cracked pavement. The weird thing? The car was unlocked. Emma's purse was inside. Her phone was inside. Even her keys were still hanging in the ignition. It looked like she had just stepped out and vanished. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no broken glass, just Emma's car, sitting alone under the gray morning sky. Rachel stood by the police tape, hugging herself against the chill. Something about this felt wrong. Watched as officers moved around, snapping pictures, writing notes, pretending they knew what they were doing. But Rachel could see it in their faces. They were as clueless as she was. She overheard one officer whisper, another one, before he quickly walked away. Another one. What did he mean by that? Rachel's mind raced. Was Emma's disappearance not the first? Later that night, Rachel sat on her couch staring at her phone. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't even think straight. That's when her phone buzzed. One new message. It was from Emma's number. Rachel's heart jumped into her throat, hands shaking. She opened the text. It said just 3 words. Don't trust them. Rachel sat frozen, rereading the message over and over. Who sent this? Was Emma alive? Who were they? Before she could even think of what to do next, her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, just an address, somewhere on the edge of town. A place Rachel had never heard of before. The screen flickered for a second, like something was interfering, and then the messages disappeared, gone, like they were never sent. Rachel stared at her, green, heart pounding. What was going on? Was this some kind of joke? Or was Emma trying to send her a clue? She didn't know, but one thing was clear. She had to find out, even if it meant risking everything. Rachel didn't sleep that night. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that message again. Don't trust them. And then, that weird address, gone in seconds, like a ghost. She couldn't shake the feeling that Emma was out there somewhere, trying to reach her. At sunrise, Rachel made a decision. She wasn't going to sit around waiting for the police to investigate. She was going to find Emma herself. Grabbing her jacket and a flashlight, she got in her car and punched the address into her GPS. It was a 20-minute drive, heading toward the edge of Willow Creek, near the old railway tracks, a part of town most people stayed away from. The road got bumpier the further she went. Cracks split the pavement. Tall weeds reached up from the ditches. It felt like she was driving straight into a forgotten world. Finally, the GPS beeped. You have arrived. Rachel looked around. There was nothing but an abandoned storage building, rusty metal walls, boarded up windows, a sign swinging in the wind, creaking on its hinges. She hesitated. Every horror movie she'd ever seen screamed at her to turn back. But this wasn't a movie. This was Emma. Taking a deep breath, Rachel got out of the car. The place smelled of mold and dust. Rachel found a side door half hanging off its hinges. She pushed it open and stepped inside. The inside was dark and cold. Old boxes were scattered everywhere, covered in cobwebs, broken. Furniture piled up like a barricade. Rachel swept her flashlight across the room and froze. In the middle of the floor, someone had left something behind. A cell phone, not Emma's. This one was black, scratched up, ancient looking. Rachel picked it up carefully. It was dead. No charger, no cord, nothing, just the phone and a piece of paper underneath it. The paper was folded neatly like someone had been waiting for her to find it. Rachel unfolded it slowly. Scrawled in messy handwriting were 4 words. He's one of them. No names, no explanations, nothing else. Rachel's heart thudded in her chest. Who was he? What did this mean? Was this connected to Emma's disappearance, or worse? Was someone trying to lead Rachel into a trap? Suddenly, Rachel heard a noise behind her, a creak of metal. She whipped around, heart hammering. At the doorway stood a man she didn't recognize. Tall, wearing a leather jacket, face shadowed by a baseball cap pulled low. Looking for something, he said. Lie? Tell the truth? truth. Before she could answer, he took a slow step forward. "You shouldn't be here," he said. Rachel backed away, clutching the dead phone in her hand. The man watched her closely, as if deciding something. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out, gone. Rachel didn't wait around. Ran back to her car, hands shaking, she sped away from the storage building, tires kicking up gravel behind her. Her thoughts were a tangled mess. Who was that man? Was he following her? Was he the one of them the note warned about? The farther she drove from that place, the more she realized she wasn't just looking for Emma anymore. She was caught in something bigger, something dangerous, and she was running out of time. Back home, Rachel sat in her bedroom, staring at the dead phone. There had to be something on it, a clue, a lead. She needed it powered up. Remembering an old junk drawer, she dug around until she found an ancient charger that almost fit. With some wiggling, the phone lit up. The screen flickered, struggling to stay alive. Rachel's heart skipped a beat. It opened straight to the photo gallery. Only one photo. Rachel tapped it. The picture was blurry, taken at night, but she could just make out two people. One was Emma. The other was Chief Daniels, the town's police chief, standing together, talking, and Emma looked scared. Rachel dropped the phone, her mind spinning. Chief Daniels? He was supposed to be leading the search for Emma. He was supposed to be helping. But what if he was involved all along? What if he was the one Emma warned her about? Rachel realized she couldn't trust anyone, not even the police. That night, Rachel locked all her doors and windows. She slept with the flashlight under her pillow and the dead phone beside her bed. And even though she was exhausted, she didn't dare fall fully asleep, because somewhere out there, in the darkness of Willow Creek, someone was watching, and they knew Rachel was getting too close to the truth. Way too close. Episode 3. The Stranger in Town. The next morning, Willow Creek felt different, quieter, tense, like the whole town was holding its breath. Rachel pulled her hoodie up over her head as she walked to the corner cafe. She needed coffee, and she needed to think. The photo of Chief Daniels with Emma kept flashing through her mind. The dead phone, the hidden messages. It all pointed to something rotten at the heart of her town, and Rachel was starting to realize she was in way over her head. Inside the cafe, people whispered in hushed tones. Everyone had heard about Emma's disappearance, but no one wanted to say it out loud, not in a town like Willow Creek where secrets were currency. Rachel ordered a coffee and sat by the window. The street. That's when she saw him. A man she didn't recognize. Tall, dark jeans, leather jacket, a backpack slung over one shoulder. He wasn't from around here, that much was obvious. In Willow Creek, new faces stood out like a sore thumb. The man glanced around, then walked into the cafe. Rachel's instincts screamed at her to stay invisible, but before she could even look away, he spotted her and walked straight toward her table. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Rachel hesitated. Everything about him said trouble, but something in his eyes, tired, serious, made her nod. The man sat down across from her. "I'm Nick," he said. "Nick Larson." Rachel stayed quiet. Nick lowered his voice. "I know you're looking for Emma." Rachel's stomach dropped. "How do you know that?" she whispered. Nick leaned in. "Because I'm looking for her too," he said. "And you're not the only one who's noticed something's wrong around here." Rachel's hands gripped her coffee cup tight. "Who are you?" she asked, voice shaky. "How do you know Emma?" Nick glanced around the cafe, making sure no one was listening. "Didn't know her personally," he said, "but she found something out, something big, and she tried to warn someone. Before she disappeared." Rachel swallowed hard. "What did she find out?" Nick shook his head. "Not here. Too many ears." He scribbled something on a napkin and slid it across the table. "Meet me tonight, 9 p.m. The old rail yard." Rachel looked at the napkin. Another address. Another abandoned place. "Why should I trust you?" she asked. Nick stood up, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. "You shouldn't," he said, walking away. All day, Rachel wrestled with the decision. Go to the meeting? Stay away? She didn't even know if Nick was telling the truth. He could be leading her into a trap. But deep down, Rachel knew she didn't have a choice. If there was any chance of finding Emma, she had to take the risk. At 9 p.m. sharp, Rachel drove to the old rail yard. It was even creepier at night. Rusty train cars sat abandoned on broken tracks. Weeds grew wild between the gravel. The air smelled like rain and old metal. Rachel parked under a broken streetlight and got out, heart hammering. She kept her phone clutched tight in her hand, ready to call for help if she needed it. She waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Then, a shadow moved between the train cars. Nick, he waved her over. Rachel hesitated, then followed. They met behind an old red boxcar. Nick pulled something out of his backpack, a worn folder stuffed with papers and photos. Rachel stared. "What is that?" she whispered. Nick handed it to her. "Proof," he said. "Proof that something's been going on in Willow Creek for a long time." Rachel flipped through the folder. Photos of meetings late at night. Copies of strange bank transfers. A list of names. Names she recognized from tow. Politicians, police officers, even the mayor. All tied together by one thing. Emma had uncovered a secret network of corruption, and it looked like she had been silenced because of it. Rachel's mind reeled. This is huge," she said. Nick nodded. "They control everything. Money, power, and anyone who asked too many questions disappears. Rachel's throat felt dry. What about you? She asked. Why are you helping me? Nick's jaw tightened. Because 2 years ago, my brother disappeared too. Rachel's eyes widened. I thought he ran away, Nick said bitterly. That's what they told us, but now I know better. He looked her dead in the eyes. They're covering up more than just Emma. They've been doing it for years. Rachel felt like the ground was slipping out from under her. Her small, safe town wasn't safe at all. It was rotten to the core, and she was standing right in the middle of it. Suddenly, headlights swept across the rail yard. Rachel and Nick ducked behind the boxcar. A black SUV rolled slowly past, its windows tinted dark. Rachel's heart pounded so loud she thought they would hear it. Nick grabbed her arm. We have to move, he whispered. They know you're looking. Rachel stared at him, fear freezing her in place. Rachel, Nick said urgently, if you want to find Emma and stay alive, you have to trust me. Rachel closed her eyes, took a deep breath and nodded, because there was no turning back now. Episode 4, Secrets. Underneath, Rachel and Nick moved fast, ducking behind rusted train cars as the black SUV cruised by. They didn't dare make a sound. The SUV's engine rumbled low, slow, like a predator hunting its prey. Rachel's heart hammered against her ribs. After what felt like forever, the SUV finally disappeared into the night. Nick waited a few more seconds, listening carefully, before whispering, "Come on, we're not safe here." They sprinted to Rachel's car, tires kicking up gravel. As they pulled away from the rail yard, Rachel kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting the SUV to appear again. It didn't, not yet. Nick led Rachel to a safe place, an old auto shop his uncle used to own before it shut down. The front windows were boarded up. Inside, it smelled like oil and dust, but at least it was safe. For now, Rachel paced the floor while Nick spread out the folder of evidence. They had to figure out Emma's clues, fast. Nick pulled out an old map of Willow Creek. He pointed at 3 spots, circled in red marker. This is what Emma was investigating, he said. The abandoned storage building where Rachel found the dead phone, the town's old water treatment plant, and the Willow Creek cemetery. Rachel frowned. The cemetery? Why would she be looking there? Nick gave a grim smile. Because sometimes, he said, the best place to hide a secret is right under everyone's nose. They decided to start with the water treatment plant. It was closest and least likely to be crawling with people in the middle of the night. They loaded the folder back into Nick's backpack and headed out. The plant sat on the outskirts of town. It had been shut down years ago after the town built a new one, or so the official story went. Rachel shivered as they approached the rusted gate. The whole place looked like a horror movie. Set fences falling apart, weeds taller than Rachel, windows smashed out, and dead silence. Nick used a crowbar to pry the gate open, just enough for them to slip through. Inside, the place was a maze of pipes, broken machinery, and dark hallways. Rachel kept her flashlight low to avoid drawing attention. Nick led the way, checking every corner. They moved deeper into the building until they reached a heavy steel door. Duffer was half open, just enough to squeeze through. On the other side was a large underground room. The walls were lined with filing cabinets and old desks. Mold and mildew clung to everything, but something caught Rachel's eye. In the center of the room was a hatch built into the floor. A hatch that didn't belong in any normal water plant. Rachel knelt down. The hatch had a heavy chain across it, locked tight. Nick cursed under his breath. Of course it's locked. Rachel scanned the room and spotted a dusty tool chest in the corner. Inside, she found a bolt cutter. Perfect. With a sharp snap, the lock fell away. Both knowing that whatever was down there, it could change everything. Nick grabbed the hatch handle and pulled. It groaned open, releasing a blast of cold, damp air. Rachel gagged at the smell. Rot, rust, and something else she couldn't name. Nick dropped down first, then helped Rachel climb. Down into the darkness. Below, they found a narrow tunnel. The walls were made of crumbling brick. The air was heavy, hard to breathe. Rachel's flashlight shook in her hand. Where does this even go? She whispered. Nick shrugged. Only one way to find out. They followed the tunnel, the air growing colder with every step. After about 50 feet, the tunnel opened into a hidden chamber. Rachel froze. In the middle of the room were rows of metal shelves, and on those shelves, boxes, dozens of them. Nick pried one open. Inside were stacks of files, yellowed with age. Rachel grabbed a folder and flipped through it. What she saw made her blood run cold. Photos, names, dates, people from Willow Creek. Some were marked missing. Some were marked resolved. Next to some names were chilling notes handled, paid off, silenced. Rachel's stomach twisted. This wasn't just about Emma. It was about dozens, maybe hundreds, of people who had disappeared or been threatened over the years. The corruption ran deeper than she ever could have imagined. Nick's face was grim. This is it, he said. This is what they were hiding. Rachel's mind raced. If they could get these files to someone trustworthy, maybe someone outside Willow Creek, they could blow the whole thing open, but they needed to move fast. If the people behind this found out what Rachel and Nick had discovered, they wouldn't just disappear Emma, they'd disappear them too. Suddenly, Rachel's flashlight flickered. She tapped it, and it went dark. Total blackness swallowed them. Rachel's heart leapt into her throat. Nick whispered, "Urgent, run." Rachel Rachel didn't wait. She grabbed a handful of files and sprinted back toward the tunnel. Behind them, footsteps echoed, heavy, fast, closing in. They weren't alone anymore. Someone had found them, and they weren't leaving without a fight. Episode 5. Chased in the dark, Rachel ran blindly through the underground tunnel, clutching the stolen files against her chest. Behind her, heavy footsteps pounded closer. Nick was right behind her, breathing hard. "Left!" he shouted. Rachel veered, left at a fork in the tunnel, skidding on the damp floor. Her flashlight was dead. The only light came from the faint glow of Nick's phone, swinging wildly as he ran. The tunnel twisted and turned, endless and confusing. Rachel's legs burned. Her chest felt like it might explode, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. If they caught her, it was over, not just for her, but for Emma, for everyone. Up ahead, Nick spotted a ladder bolted to the wall. He shouted over his shoulder, "Climb." Rachel didn't hesitate. She grabbed the ladder and scrambled up, the stolen files stuffed inside her hoodie. Nick followed, climbing fast. Below them, a flashlight beam bobbed wildly as someone chased them through the tunnel, shouting in anger. Rachel's hands slipped on the cold, wet metal, but she forced herself to keep climbing. Finally, she reached the top. A rusted hatch blocked their way. Rachel pushed, but it wouldn't budge. "Nick," she cried, panic rising. Nick climbed up beside her. He braced his shoulder against the hatch and shoved with everything he had. With a screech of metal, it popped open. Rachel scrambled out into the night air, gasping. Nick hauled himself upright, after her, and slammed the hatch shut behind them. They were in a deserted alley behind the old parts of town, broken streetlights, trash blowing in the wind. For a moment, they just stood there, catching their breath. Then Nick grabbed her hand. "Move." They sprinted through the back streets, keeping low and sticking to the shadows. Rachel's mind raced. Who was chasing them? How had they known where to find her and Nick? Were they even safe now? Finally, they ducked into the ruins of an abandoned diner. Nick pushed a battered freezer in front of the door, barricading it. Inside, it was pitch black. The only sound was their heavy breathing. Rachel slumped against the counter, heart hammering. They had the files. They had proof. But now they were fugitives in their own town. Nick sat down across from her, running a hand through his hair. "You okay?" he asked. Rachel nodded weakly. "Yeah, you?" Nick gave a humorless laugh. "I'll live." Rachel pulled the stolen folder from her hoodie. Pages spilled out across the counter. Old yellow documents full of terrible secrets. They lit a small flashlight, careful to keep it low. Rachel flipped through more of the files and found something that made her blood freeze. A photo of a man, tall, broad shoulders, familiar. It was Chief Daniels, but not in uniform. In the photo, he was shaking hands with a man in a black suit. A man Rachel didn't recognize. On the back of the photo, in faded handwriting, it said, "Asset acquired. Full loyalty secured." Rachel stared at it, heart sinking. The chief wasn't just corrupt, he was bought and paid for by someone even bigger. Nick leaned over her shoulder, frowning. "Who's the other guy?" he asked. Rachel shook her head. "I don't know, but whoever he is, he's the one pulling the strings." Nick flipped through more pages. He found an old newspaper article, an announcement about a new development project outside of town, a fancy new resort, except it never got built. Instead, the land was quietly sold off, no questions asked, and the records disappeared. Rachel pieced it together slowly. Emma must have discovered that the town's leaders were selling off public land in secret, pocketing the money, silencing anyone who asked questions. That's why she had to disappear. Rachel's hand shook. "Emma tried to stop them," she whispered. Nick nodded grimly. "And now, it's our turn." Suddenly, there was a sharp noise outside the diner. Rachel and Nick froze. Voices. Footsteps. "They found us," Rachel thought, heart leaping into her throat. Nick snatched the files off the counter and stuffed them back into his backpack. He looked at Rachel. "No matter what happens," he whispered, "you run. You get these to someone outside of Willow Creek." Rachel wanted to argue, wanted to say she wasn't leaving him behind, but before she could, the front window shattered. Someone was coming in. Nick yanked open the back door and shoved Rachel through it. "Go!" he hissed. Rachel sprinted into the night, clutching the backpack. She didn't look back. Couldn't. She heard Nick shouting behind her. Tears blurred her vision, but she didn't stop running. She ducked, down alleyways, jumped fences, stayed low and silent. Her only goal now was to survive long enough to tell the truth, to finish what Emma started, and to save Nick, if she could. After what felt like hours, Rachel reached an old bridge on the edge of town. She collapsed behind a support pillar, gasping for breath. She pulled out her phone, hands trembling, and opened the only contact she thought she could. Trust an old college professor who now worked as an investigative journalist in the city. Rachel typed a shaky message. "I have proof. Emma's disappearance wasn't an accident. I need help. Please." She hit send, praying it wasn't too late. In the darkness, Rachel clutched the backpack of stolen files to her chest. Above her, storm clouds rumbled. The fight was just beginning, and Rachel was ready. Episode 6. The Price of Truth. Rachel sat under the old bridge, shivering from cold and fear. She kept checking her phone every few minutes, but there was no reply. No, I'm coming. No, stay safe. Just silence. Above her, thunder rolled across the night sky. Rain started to fall, slow at first, then harder. Rachel pulled her hoodie up and tucked the backpack under her arms, trying to protect the files inside. She had to keep them safe, no matter what. After what felt like an eternity, her phone buzzed. Rachel's heart jumped. It was a message from her old journalism professor, Mr. Carter. Meet me at Silver Pine Cafe. 20 minutes, be careful. Rachel frowned. The Silver Pine Cafe was a 24-hour diner just off the highway, far enough from town that it was safer, but still risky. She stuffed her phone in her pocket, pulled the backpack tight, and started walking. Every step felt like she was dragging 1,000 pounds behind her, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. The town was eerily quiet as she moved through the shadows. Lights were off in most houses. No cars on the streets. Like, the whole town was holding its breath. Rachel stuck to side streets, staying out of sight. Every time a car passed, she ducked behind bushes or fences. She couldn't be seen. Not now. Finally, she spotted the glowing red sign of the Silver Pine Cafe through the rain. A few trucks were parked outside. Rachel wiped the rain from her face and slipped inside. A little bell over the door jingled. The cafe was nearly empty. A tired waitress wiped down the counter. An old man read a newspaper in the corner, and at a booth near the back, there was Mr. Carter. He looked older, grayer than she remembered, but his eyes were still sharp. When he saw her, he stood up quickly, motioning her over. Rachel slid into the booth across from him. You look like hell, he said gently. Rachel gave a weak laugh. You have no idea. She placed the backpack on the table between them. This is everything. About Emma, about Willow Creek. Mr. Carter opened the backpack and flipped through the files. His face grew serious. He shook his head slowly. This is bad, he muttered. Real bad. Rachel swallowed hard. I need you to help me get it out. Expose them. Mr. Carter nodded. You did the right thing coming to me. He started gathering the files neatly, carefully. Rachel felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, it was almost over. But then, the little bell over the cafe door jingled again. Rachel looked up, and her stomach dropped. 2 men in dark jackets walked in. Not cops, not normal customers. The kind of men who moved like they were used to hurting people. They scanned the cafe. Their eyes locked onto Rachel. They started walking toward her. Fast, Mr. Carter saw them too. Stay calm, he whispered. He stuffed the files under his coat and slid out of the booth. Follow me. They moved toward the back exit, trying not to run. The 2 men picked up their pace. Rachel's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. They pushed through the kitchen, knocking over a tray of dishes. The waitress shouted, startled. They burst out the back door into the rain. A narrow alley led to the parking lot. Rachel and Mr. Carter ran, slipping on the wet pavement. The men chased after them, shouting, Stop, you're making it worse for yourself. Rachel didn't even glance back. She spotted Mr. Carter's old blue sedan at the edge of the lot. They dove inside. Mr. Carter fumbled with the keys, hands shaking. The engine roared to life just as the 2 men reached the car. One of them slammed, a fist on the window. Rachel screamed. Mr. Carter hit the gas. The sedan peeled out, tires screeching. The men fell back, shouting curses that Rachel barely heard over the pounding of her heart. They sped down the highway. Rachel struggled to catch her breath. They knew we were meeting, she said, voice trembling. Mr. Carter's jaw was tight. They're watching everything, listening. Rachel looked at him sharply. You think my phone's tapped? Mr. Carter didn't answer. He didn't have to. Rachel felt sick. She'd led them straight to him. After about 20 minutes of silent driving, Mr. Carter pulled off onto a muddy dirt road. He killed the headlights and parked behind a thick clump of trees. Rachel looked around, nervous. Where are we? Mr. Carter leaned over, speaking low and serious. We can't go back into town. Not now. Not ever. If they catch you with those files, you disappear. Rachel hugged herself, shivering. What do we do? Mr. Carter pulled out a battered, old laptop. We scan everything. Send it to every major news outlet we can. They can't silence all of them. Rachel nodded, teeth chattering. Okay, let's do it. They spent the next 2 hours working in the cramped, freezing car. Rachel read off names, dates, details. Mr. Carter scanned and uploaded documents as fast as he could. They sent files to newspapers, TV stations, online journalists, anyone who might. Listen, finally, just before dawn, Mr. Carter hit send on the last batch of files. He leaned back, exhausted. It's done, he said. Rachel stared out at the horizon where the first light of day was breaking through the storm clouds. For the first time in days, she let herself believe it. Maybe they had a chance. Maybe Emma would finally get justice. But as the sun rose higher, Rachel noticed something. A black SUV pulled onto the dirt road, heading straight for them. Mr. Carter cursed. They found us. this. Rachel's hope shattered. The fight wasn't over yet. It had only just begun. Episode 7, Last Stand. The black SUV barreled toward them, tires chewing up the muddy road. Rachel's heart slammed against her ribs. "No time," Mr. Carter shouted. He shoved the laptop into Rachel's arms. "Go, get into the woods." Rachel stared at him, panicked. "What about you?" "I'll hold them off," he said, deadly serious. "You have to protect the truth." Before Rachel could argue, Mr. Carter yanked open the car door. He grabbed a tire iron from the floor and stepped into the open. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the morning was still gray and cold. Rachel hesitated only a second longer. Then, she turned and sprinted toward the trees, the heavy backpack banging against her back. The laptop clutched tight. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Behind her, she heard shouting, men barking orders. Then, a loud crash, glass breaking. Rachel pushed harder, crashing through bushes and weaving between trees. Branches clawed at her face and arms, but she didn't stop. She needed to disappear, just like they had made Emma disappear. Rachel ran until her legs gave out. She collapsed under a fallen tree, gasping for air. She could barely see the dirt road anymore, but she heard voices, angry, getting closer. They were tracking her, maybe with dogs, maybe with drones. It didn't matter. She had to keep moving. Her mind raced. She couldn't outrun them forever. She needed a plan, fast. Rachel wiped the rain from her eyes and pulled out the laptop. The files were still there, sent out into the world. The truth was out, but if they caught her, they would silence her anyway, make it look like she vanished or worse. She opened the last email Mr. Carter had sent. Attached at the bottom was a short message. "If you're reading this, tell them about Project Echo." Project Echo? Rachel frowned. That wasn't in the files. What was it? A stick snapped nearby. Rachel froze. Someone was close. Too close. She stuffed the laptop back into the backpack, zipped it tight, and crawled deeper into the underbrush. She could hear them now. Two men moving slowly, scanning the trees. One of them was speaking into a walkie-talkie. "Target spotted. Moving in." Rachel's breath caught. They were talking about her. Suddenly, an idea sparked in her mind. It was risky, maybe suicidal, but it was her only shot. She grabbed a rock and threw it as hard as she could toward the left. It crashed through the bushes with a loud noise. The men instantly turned, rushing toward the sound. Rachel bolted the opposite direction, sprinting toward a small river she'd spotted earlier. If she could cross it, maybe she could lose them. The cold water hit her like a slap when she jumped in. It was deeper than she thought. She struggled against the current, slipping and stumbling, but she pushed on, forcing herself to wade across. Behind her, the men realized they'd been tricked. They shouted and gave chase. Rachel reached the far bank, dragging herself out, soaked and freezing. No time to rest. She stumbled to her feet and kept running. Ahead, through the trees, she saw something. A road, and parked at the side of it, a rusty pickup truck. An old farmer was loading crates of vegetables into the back. Hope surged in Rachel's chest. She sprinted toward him, waving frantically. "Please help me," she shouted. The farmer looked up, startled. Before he could say anything, Rachel shoved the backpack into his arms. "Please," she gasped. "Take this. Drive. Don't stop for anyone." The farmer stared at her, confused, but something in her desperate eyes must have convinced him. He nodded. Rachel gave him a shove toward the truck. "Go!" He jumped into the driver's seat and roared off down the road. Rachel watched the truck disappear into the distance, and with it, the files that could save everything. The truth was out. Even if she didn't make it, the truth would survive. Footsteps pounded behind her. Rachel turned just as the two men burst through the trees. One tackled her to the ground. She fought, kicking, scratching, punching, but they were bigger, stronger. They pinned her arms and dragged her toward the SUV. Rachel screamed. No one heard, or if they did, no one dared to help. They threw her into the back seat, slammed the door, and locked it. One of the men leaned over her, sneering. "You made a big mistake, kid," he said. Rachel glared up at him, bloody and defiant. "You're too late," she spat. "It's already out." The man's face darkened. "We'll see." The SUV peeled away from the woods, roaring back toward town. In the front seat, the other man pulled out a phone. Rachel caught a glimpse of the screen. A text message flashing, "Asset compromised. Initiate cleanup. Project Echo at risk." There it was again. Project Echo. Bigger than just Emma. Bigger than Willow Creek. Something huge was coming, and Rachel knew, even as the car sped down the highway. They were willing to kill to keep it secret, but it was too late. The world was about to know everything. Episode 8, Echoes of the Truth. The SUV roared down the highway, rain hammering the windshield. Rachel sat in the back seat, wrists tied with plastic cuffs, her body aching from the struggle. Her mind raced. Where were they taking her? Was this it? Would she ever see daylight again? She stared out the window, trying to stay calm. Think. Focus. She had done everything she could. The files were gone, racing away in the back of that farmer's truck. The truth was already out. Even if they buried her, they couldn't bury what she uncovered. That thought gave her a thin thread of hope to hold on to. The SUV took an exit ramp, heading toward a stretch of abandoned warehouses near the old industrial part of town. Rachel's stomach twisted. This wasn't a police station. It wasn't anywhere good. The driver made a sharp turn and pulled into a cracked, weed-covered parking lot. No other cars, no people, just silence and decay. Perfect place for someone to vanish forever. One of the men got out and yanked open her door. "Move," he barked. Rachel stumbled out, heart pounding. The men marched her toward a heavy steel door. Inside, the warehouse was dark, cold, and empty, except for a single chair under a flickering light. They shoved her into it. A third man stepped out of the shadows. Clean suit, cold eyes. He looked at Rachel like she was less than dirt. "You caused a lot of problems, Miss Turner," he said calmly. Rachel lifted her chin. "And you caused a lot of dead girls." The man smiled thinly. "Careful, you're already on very thin ice." He pulled out a folder, not the ones Rachel had stolen, but something else. Inside were photos. Photos of Rachel, at her school, at her house, even inside her favorite coffee shop. They had been watching her for weeks, maybe months. Rachel felt a chill crawl up her spine. "You think you can beat us?" the man said. "We don't lose." Rachel forced a small smile. "You already did." The man's face darkened. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." He leaned closer. "Project Echo isn't just about Willow Creek. It's everywhere. Every town, every school, every parent." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. What is it?" He chuckled coldly. "Insurance," he said. "Control." He stood up straight. "And you're about to disappear so neatly, no one will ever think twice." He nodded to the two men. They moved toward Rachel, pulling something from their jackets, a syringe. Rachel struggled, kicking at the chair, but it was bolted to the ground. "No," she screamed. "You're too late. Everyone knows." The man in the suit chuckled again. "Not enough, and not in time." Suddenly, a loud crash. The front doors of the warehouse burst open. Floodlights poured in. Shouts, footsteps. Dozens of figures in dark jackets flooded the building, but not the same kind of men who had kidnapped her. These had bright yellow letters on their backs. FBI. The suited man's face turned white. The agents shouted commands. "Drop your weapons! Hands in the air! Step away from the girl." The two men hesitated, then dropped the syringe and raised their hands. Rachel sat frozen in shock as the warehouse filled with chaos. Within minutes, the three men were handcuffed and led away. Agent rushed over to Rachel and cut the plastic cuffs from her wrists. "You're safe now," he said. Rachel blinked up at him, dazed. How did you find me?" The agent smiled. "Anonymous tip," he said. "Someone sent us everything. The files, the recordings, even a location tag." Rachel's chest tightened. Mr. Carter, he had made sure she wasn't alone. He had saved her. Outside, the gray clouds were finally breaking apart. The first beams of sunlight pierced through, warm and golden. Rachel sat on the back of an ambulance, wrapped in a blanket, answering questions from the agents. She told them everything. About Emma, about the files, about the men who had hunted her. They listened carefully, respectfully, and when she was done, they promised her, "We're taking them down. All of them." Over the next few days, the news exploded. Every major network, every headline. National scandal, Willow Creek conspiracy uncovered. Project Echo, dark secrets hidden across the country. Whistleblower student saves lives, exposes network of corruption. Rachel's face wasn't shown. They protected her identity. But inside, she knew. She had kept her promise to Emma, and to all the other victims no one had listened to. Mr. Carter survived too. Bruised, battered, but alive. When Rachel visited him in the hospital, he smiled weakly. "You did good, kid," he said. Rachel squeezed his hand. "We did good." Weeks later, Rachel stood alone at Willow Creek Cemetery at a small, simple grave. Emma Clark. She placed a single white rose on the headstone. "I'm sorry it took so long," Rachel whispered, "but they'll never forget you now." The wind stirred around her, carrying away her words like a prayer. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang, soft, hopeful. Rachel turned and walked away, her heart heavy but stronger. The fight wasn't over. There were still so many wrongs in the world, but now she knew. One voice could make a difference. One story could change everything, and Rachel Turner wasn't done yet, not even close.